Hi there. Welcome back, at long last, to Lyre. It has been a long time since I've touched this VN here on this channel. So long, in fact, that it has since finished in its entirety, and a sequel has been announced, which is absolutely incredible, and I'm very, very excited for that when it eventually drops. As well as that, there's been a few rewrites and feature updates in the finished build, some of which will be shown here, and some of which you'll have to play from the start yourself in order to see, as they're in Chapter 1. As well as all of that, Atmac was very kind to provide the usual content warning for me this time, as you saw in that opening sequence there, so you know what to do if you are under the age of 18. Chop chop, people. With all of that said, let's dive right back into Lyre, shall we? Lights, camera, action. My eyes feel dry and burn at the corners. I lay there motionless, not because I can't move, but because I don't want to. I feel so exhausted. The lower halves of my arms and legs feel like stone pillars. I slowly try to collect myself as I wake up. Sometimes, when I'm waking up, it takes me a minute to realize I'm even awake. I have to steadily become more aware of my surroundings and try to grasp what's going on. I groggily open my eyes. It's still night? I look out the moonlit window and scan the room, adjusting my eyes. That would make sense considering how much sleep I've already gotten. I raise myself from my reclined position. Halfway up, I feel a tug at my throat. It feels like a smooth rope is wrapped around my neck. Suddenly, I'm pulled back by a hard jolt. Then I feel a burning substance lurch down my throat. It's acidic and has a terrible taste to it. What's happening? I struggle underneath the grasp of the rope, but it appears pointless. There's a harder tug as it pulls me deeper onto the bed. I feel the burning liquid pouring down my throat faster now, as my upper body sinks into the covers. I try to scream out for Lyre, hoping that he's in the hall still. Shadows are cast through the crack under the door. It looks like someone is on the other side, standing in front of it. Finally, as my vision begins to fade along with my hearing, there's a muffled breath in my right ear. I jolt awake, eyes wide open, breathing hard as my chest heaves up and down. The early morning light is pouring through the window, casting a pink hue on the bricks. I hate nightmares. Especially the realistic ones. They're even scarier when they make sense. It's much different when they consist of preposterous scenarios that could never even happen. Nightmares like the one I just had are the ones that linger in my head for a while afterwards. I've really got to stop drinking before bed. I mutter this to myself, rubbing the sides of my head. I rustle out of bed and get to my feet. The ground is still a bit cold. I should probably ask if I could have a rug brought up. I walk across the room, my bare feet lightly padding against the cool ground and sending a fresh feeling throughout my body. The stress from that vivid nightmare is slowly fading away as I lightly move towards the window. Once I reach it, I press my hand to the cold glass and look outside. There isn't much to see from this side of the castle, just some mountains and the sky. I wish I had a view of the town. I stare out at the mountains and the way they cascade down from the skies like great stone blankets covered in grass. The trees are slowly losing their leaves as winter approaches. I hear the door open and some shuffling. When I turn around, I see Leaf standing in the doorway, carrying a tray with food. I see some meat, cheese, bread, and a cream spread. It all looks really good, and I am a bit hungry. Good morning, Lord Richter.
I hope that you slept well.
Good morning, Leaf, and no, not as well as one would hope.
I'm sorry to hear that. Either way, you've slept more than enough. Some time being awake would do you some good.
He lifts the tray in his hands, adjusting his grip on it.
I thought that I would bring your breakfast up, since I also wanted to give you some of this.
He nudges the corner of the tray where a small bottle shakes around.
You seem to be doing fine right now, but just in case you feel any pain, you can take a spoonful of this.
I rub my side and don't really feel any discomfort. It does feel a bit sore, though. Thank you.
It's no problem, really.
He sets the tray down on the small table next to my bed. After fiddling with one of the bottles, he turns and looks in my direction. His gaze meets with my side and he tilts his head in curiosity.
You're healing very fast.
I rub at my side and shrug. Humans do that. You said it yourself.
I did. I have the fortunate opportunity of knowing another human, but she's never been injured this badly. It's very interesting seeing your body recover so fast.
I decide to change the subject as I'm afraid he might politely ask to vivisect me. How often do you wear that? I say, limply raising my hand and pointing to his mask.
I find that it's very useful in my profession. I've never gotten sick after helping a patient.
He holds his hands together down by his waist as he idly pats his clawed foot against the ground. Has anyone ever seen your face? He looks down with a sigh of defeat and then brings his gloved hands up behind his head.
Of course people have seen my face.
I see him start to fiddle with the little leather latch on the back.
Still, I had to wear this once for a procedure, and ever since I find a certain comfort in wearing it.
He pulls the mask off, tossing it onto the bed. He then takes his hat off and looks up at me. He looks like a raven, which I find ironic. However, he's about the size of a crow. His little beady green eyes stare up at me with a look of expectancy. Without the mask, he looks a lot more approachable. I know he's a lot older than me, but he's almost cute. I don't know how offensive that is, so I'll refrain from saying anything.
Satisfied?
He says in a curious yet slightly annoyed tone. Sorry. Yes, perfectly satisfied. I say this back to him with some satisfaction in my tone. He goes to put his mask back on while averting his gaze. I feel a lot better with you poking and prodding me now that I know what you look like. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I can make you feel a bit more comfortable.
He steps over to the door and opens it.
If you have any questions, just ask me or anyone around the castle.
Where's Lyre? With it being the first thought to come to mind, I blurted out without any hesitation. Leaf pauses for a moment, leaning his head out of the doorway to quickly stare down the hall.
At this time of morning, he could be anywhere.
I wonder if he's sleeping. One would hope he didn't stay out in the halls all night. I try to think of any other questions I might have. I could really use a bath. I feel very unclean. Where is the bathing room?
If you head left, it's at the very end of the hallway behind the wooden door painted white.
Left, wooden door, painted white. Got it. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Have a nice day.
With that, he leaves through the doorway and I'm left alone again. I'm glad that I managed to get him to take off that mask. It's not like I'm someone riddled with a contagious disease. Still, if he finds comfort in it, then it's not my place to judge. I walk over to the desk near the door and fidget with some of the things on it. There's a nice looking quill which I pick up and twirl around in my fingers. I set it back down and then walk over to my pile of belongings. I'll probably have someone come up and unpack my things later. I guess I can arrange them to my liking once they're at least out of their trunks. Especially the clothes. I turn back to the tray of food sitting on my bed and carry it over to the desk. Sitting down in the chair, I scoot it forward. It's very comfortable, and the desk is also at the perfect height. I go through the food pretty quick as I stare out of the window at the clouds moving by. Before I know it, I'm done with my meal and drink the last drop of water. It only takes me a couple of minutes to gather myself and head out the door. Stepping out into the hallway, the walls are lined with stone pillars and there's an occasional portrait, statue, or torch. As I near the end of the hall, it turns into a sort of balcony. The pillars are separated by arched windows. I get a nice view of the fjord from here. The light from outside pours into the hall and lights up the bricks with a pink glow. A large door stands at the end of the hallway, the light shining off of it, making it contrast against the walls. I approach it and grab onto the handle. There's some resistance as I pull on the door and I'm forced to put my back into it. I pull harder and it finally budges. I swing the door open and I'm met with a wonderful smell. My eyes are instantly drawn to a large, empty pool in the center of the room with a towering fountain in the center. The faucet is shaped like a weird spiraled antler and made of a gold metal. I step into the room, the noise echoing off the walls. Even with the sound of my shoes hitting the ground, the room is peacefully quiet. To my right are 3 tall windows. Their glass is stained blue, green, and yellow. The green one is in the middle and slightly taller than the other 2. Figures. I whisper this to myself under my breath. It reverberates around the room regardless. On my left there's another large door, presumably leading to a place to change. There are some carved benches against the walls and some towels which have been folded and stacked next to a laundry chute. I set the clothes that I plan on changing into next to the towels, making sure the surface is dry. I turn and look at the pool, circling the edge, examining the fountain and trying to figure it out. After another quick scan of the room, I see some levers up against the wall in the corner. Walking up to them, I see they have different coloured handles and I figure this is the contraption to get the water flowing. One of the handles says water, another says mineral water, one says salt. Each handle has a different type of bath water and some have soaps labelled on them. I don't really know which to choose, so I decide to have some fun and just pull all of the levers by just a bit. There's a rumbling in the walls that travels through the floors and pipes snaking around under my feet. Water starts to funnel out of the prongs in the antler, arching through the air and pooling into the bowl in the centre. The water is all different colours, probably due to being mixed with so many kinds of soaps and other bath products. It fills up the bowl in the centre quickly, and soon a pillar of water starts to flow over the edge of the rim, splashing at the bottom of the pool. After a while, the water is filled up to an adequate height and starts to drain out of the sides so it doesn't overflow. It's a very enchanting sight, watching the light from the coloured windows shine into the pale room and bounce off of the multicoloured pool. The beams of light bounce off of the walls and up to the ceiling. I look up and see a large owl statue shelved into the wall above the door where I entered, its wings spread out in a large fan. I walk over to the bench next to the laundry chute and start to strip off my clothes. Once my dirty clothes are removed, I lay them in a pile on the bench and walk over to the large tub, my bare feet cold on the floor. The thick floral scent that I was hit with when I first entered the bathing room has gotten stronger now that the tub is being churned with different oils and soaps. Large bubbles are forming on the surface, and they're all beautiful colours. I sit near the edge and slowly lower my foot past the bubbles and into the water. At first the water feels cold, but as my nerves register the feeling, there's a warm sensation around my foot. I ease myself into the water and the warmth surrounds my body as I lean against the wall of the pool with my back to the entrance. The water is thick with fragrance and feels amazing on my skin. I dunk my head under the water, closing my eyes as I quickly wet my hair. When I bring my head back out of the water, I feel refreshed and rejuvenated. Although Lyle said that I didn't smell, there was no denying that I felt very dirty. I carefully start to rub at my arms and legs, cleaning myself as best I can. The waters wash away my worries, and my mind drifts away from all of the strange things that have happened so far, along with the weird dream I had this morning. I finish cleaning everything and lean back against the wall of the pool, closing my eyes to rest for a minute. As I sit there, I can feel the warm waters soak into my skin, losing myself to the feeling of comfort. I only have my eyes closed for what feels like a moment before I hear the door to my left open. Oh God. Lyle steps into the room, sliding through the half-open doorway. He stops in his tracks when he sees me, and time seems to freeze. He shakes his head as if trying to clear his mind, and then takes a few steps forward, averting his gaze.
I didn't think anyone else would be in here.
I can no longer relish in the warmth of the water as I sit there frozen with the shock. My spine feels like it's made of ice and any sudden movement might break it. I just stare at him with wide eyes. He stops in place waiting for my response, but then continues to shuffle towards the bath. Walking to the edge of the pool that's across from me, he slowly starts to get in. I look like a fool, sitting in the water with a dumbstruck look on my face. I try to keep my eyes on his, but they fall to the one place I knew they would. I can't help but glance at his bits as they rest there between his legs in full view. They're quite large, and I quickly gather my thoughts and try to come up with something to say. Something to fill the silence threatening to kill me. I really needed a bath. I bring my arms in and slink into the water. Lyle steps into the water and leans back against the wall with his arms crossed over his chest. There's a small wave created from him getting into the water which rolls over to my end of the pool. His bushy tail floats on the surface behind him before getting too wet and slowly sinking under the water.
I would feel the same if I'd been through what you've been through.
Yes. The awkward silence fills the room once more as we both sit there. The red slowly fades from my face over time as I grow more and more comfortable with the situation. So, how was your morning? He's still quiet before giving a deep breath and answering.
It was pleasant. I got plenty of sleep and went for a morning run.
He pauses again.
I do have a massive headache, though, but it should leave as quickly as it arrived. How are you feeling?
He starts to rub his arms and torso, cleaning his fur. I feel good, I suppose. I got a lot more sleep than I thought I would. After sleeping for so long, I was surprised to get any.
That's good to hear.
There's another pause in our conversation, and Lyle takes this moment to begin wetting his fur. I can tell he's just pretending to busy himself to avoid the tense feelings floating around the room. He dunks his head under the water and comes up a few seconds later, the fur around his neck completely drenched. He catches me staring at him and I casually avert my gaze. He continues, splashing around in the water, then speaks up.
I know this is a public bath, but I hope I'm not invading your privacy. I wouldn't want you to be uncomfortable.
I can't blame him, but of course it was uncomfortable. Here I am, enjoying a nice bath alone with my thoughts, and in steps an exposed wolfman. In any other situation I wouldn't mind, but I was not prepared for this. I glance in his direction and see an embarrassed look on his face. Don't worry about it. I try to relax and move my way around the bench.
Okay.
I watch him scrub the fur around his shoulders and neck and then splash water on himself. He then dunks his entire head under the water and begins to scrub away, his ears flopping around. I just sit there and stare at him for a bit. When I catch myself staring at him for too long, I avert my eyes to my reflection on the surface of the water. The silence goes on for some time, and we sit there for about 3 minutes. He continues to clean himself as I just sit there. Should I get up and leave? I finished bathing a while ago, and I'm pretty sure I could just go. Do I want him to see me nude as I leave, though? Any other time I wouldn't have an issue with this, but it's different now. I can't come up with a reason why. Staying might be all right, I suppose. I just hope he doesn't think I'm staying so I can get another look at him. Lyle's eyes are closed as he leans back against the edge of the pool. Then he gives an amused snort.
Richter,
Yes, Lyle?
you added too much soap.
He snickers at this. Sorry, I thought I would experiment with it. I didn't know exactly how to use the levers.
That's fine. Other than the fact that my fur is going to be extremely poofy by the end of this. Next time only pull one soap lever down a tiny bit.
He lifts his paw from the water and pinches his finger and thumb together to emphasize how little I should use.
Mixing the waters is fine. But the soap is tricky.
Sure, thanks. There's more silence as we sit there listening to the soft noise of the water pooling from the fountain. You know,
Oh, wait. I forgot to mention something to you. I got a message from the king to let you know that supper will be at 7.
That's great. Where's supper?
Oh, it's in one of the royal dining rooms. I'll escort you there at 15 till. Oh, and don't be intimidated. He's a very kind man. Even if he looks a bit intimidating.
He's a deer, right?
Yes, he is.
That's all I really know about him.
You don't know his name.
No, I know his name, but back home in Erin everyone refers to him as the Stag King. Not meaning any offence by it, of course. I feel that might have been a rude thing to say about his king. Then again, nobody ever says it with ill intent.
Trust me, no offense was taken. Just don't say anything like that in front of him. I don't even know how he would react.
He shakes his head and chuckles.
He would probably just laugh it off. Or just not even acknowledge it. Just try not to overanalyze everything that he does.
That's something that I definitely have trouble with.
Really, it's his son who you should watch your step around.
The prince.
Yeah, he could be a real pain. He's grown to be the exact opposite of his father. Just make sure to get on his good side.
I make a mental note to not piss off the prince. Okay, I think I can do that. After all, it's a part of my job. Kissing up to the right people. He smirks at this and leans back, staring at the ceiling. My eyes drift around the room, landing on him occasionally. I don't want to be rude, but my curiosity betrays me, and my eyes lock onto him. Back in Erin, it was a rare sight to see a wolf man, even with the small population of other species. I've never been so close to one, especially in a situation like this. The way his fur gleams in the light, the way his ears twitch around at every little noise. His body is much larger than mine, and if I hadn't been introduced to his gentle personality, I'd think he was a bit intimidating. There I go again, getting carried away with my thoughts. I manage to compose myself and sit up straight. I watch the fountain flow down, creating ripples on the water as I try to take my mind off of certain things. After a while, the tense silence breaks as I hear Lyre disturb the water.
Well, I've had enough water.
I watch him turn around and lift himself from the pool. I get a glimpse at his rear and hastily look down, biting my lip. It's a sight that quickly gets my blood pumping. He gets up and walks over to one of the benches where I see some clothes laid out. He takes a towel and starts to dry himself off. By the end, his fur is really fluffy and he combs it down with his paws. While I'm watching his tail swish back and forth, he slowly turns and his gaze meets mine. I quickly look away and hope he didn't see me ogling him. I see him stand there, frozen out of the corner of my eye, then he continues to dress. Looking back up once I think it's safe, I see he's already put his underwear on and is now bending over, trying to stick his leg into a pair of trousers. I can't seem to take my eyes off of him, and I'm pretty sure he notices, because as he's bent over with his head upside down between his legs, he's looking at me while shaking his tail. There's a smirk on his face, and I realize that he's teasing me while pulling up his trousers. He knows I'm looking and just making fun of me for it. I look away with an embarrassed expression plastered on my stupid face and decide to just keep my eyes trained on the water for now. I'm still looking down at the water when I hear him walk up to the edge, his feet splashing the small puddles that have formed on the ground. He stands there smiling down at me with a loose shirt and trousers on.
I suppose I'll see you back at your room.
Yes. I'll see you in a bit. I try not to look at him as I say this, too embarrassed to look in his eyes. He looks around for a second, then gives me a nod. He walks behind me, and I hear him go through the door. I sit there for a bit longer, waiting for the hot feeling in my cheeks to go away before getting out. Why was he teasing me like that? Was it because I was staring too much? It wasn't solely out of attraction. I'm just not used to seeing men like him. Was he trying to... I dismiss the thought from my mind and rise from the pool. Once I do, I slip a little bit when walking over to the levers. I pull the lever at the end and the water shuts off immediately, the rest of the levers rising slightly in response. The water drains and then I hear the pool filling up again. I peer over the edge and see it filling up with fresh water. I guess that's how they clean the pool out of any soap left behind. I grab one of the towels from the bench and start to dry myself off. Once I'm done with that, I throw it down the chute and start putting on my clothes. It's not difficult, but it still hurts a bit due to the soreness of my wound. Once I push the last button into place, I walk over to the bench next to the door and put on my shoes. I then make my way out of the bathroom. When I step out, the sun is high up in the sky and a few birds fly by the pillars. I look down at the ground and see Lyle's wet footprints making a trail down the hall. I shake my head and chuckle, walking over to the edge of the window. Looking out the window, I get a better view of the kingdom. I see some homes scattered about, and if I crane my head in the right direction, I can get glimpses of the city and fjord. The streets are busy and the homes are stacked up the hill, forming different reeds and alleys. I gaze a bit longer, watching as everyone goes about their morning, then sigh. Oh, I can't shake off the thoughts running through my head right now. No matter how hard I try to clear my mind. It feels wrong being so infatuated with a man I just met. Not to mention the fact he's my bodyguard and a wolfman. I mean, it's not unheard of. I shake my head, ashamed of myself. There's just something about him. Sure, he's good looking, but he's different from most people I've met. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and he has a kind heart, though he humbly tries his best to hide it. He's easy to connect with. Of course, this is just my first impression of him. There's one more thing that I really like about him, though. He seems genuine. The hours drag by slowly. I spent most of the afternoon after lunch going through scrolls, documents, and letters that were sent with me to deliver to the king and his council. Most of these go to the king, though, to be personally delivered to him. I don't think he has a very large council, which is partly why I'm here, to help wherever I can. Lyre came back to my room sometime after lunch, relieving the guard who took over while he was gone. He peeked in and asked if I needed anything while I was working. I invited him in because I knew that I still wanted to pry some information out of him about what's to come. Sure, I've been in this position for some time, but this is my first time outside of my own kingdom, and they seem to do things differently around here. I also feel that it might come across as crass if I were to avoid him after what happened in the bathroom. Also, I truly enjoy his company. He's sitting in the same chair he sat in last night, toying around with a dagger. I pick up one of the letters from the small pile and place it in a stack designated for the king's eyes.
That's a lot of letters. You deliver the king's mail.
He says this in a snarky tone while resting the end of his finger on the tip of his dagger. I sigh, dropping my hands slowly and glancing out the window. Yes. Reasoning behind this was to ensure that all of these, I gaze back at him while gesturing to the letters, got here, but after the rock slide, some seem to have gone missing.
The north winds have probably carried them all to the Golden Timber by now. My men gathered up as many of them as they could, though.
I raise an eyebrow as I hold up one of the scrolls which has been smeared with dirt. I know. The trunk was practically smashed to pieces.
The lid was bent by a little, nothing more.
I'm surprised the lid was still there. He stifles a giggle and grins at me. It brings me out of my sour, overworked mood for a fleeting moment. His toothy grin is truly contagious. I grab some of the letters, bunching them up together and stacking them on the desk. Putting away the other scrolls, I sit at my workspace for a minute with my hands folded in my lap. I go back and forth from staring out the window to looking at Lyre. His bushy tail sticks out the back of his chair and sweeps the floor, slowing down over time. He sits there for a minute, tinkering with his blade before lowering his shoulders, letting out a breathy sigh.
What?
Huh?
Why are you staring at me? Is this about earlier? It wasn't my intention to. I'm sorry about gracing you with my...
What? No! I just wanted to talk more about... I gesture behind me out the door. What to expect?
Oh. Sorry, I just thought that...
He shivers, shaking his head a bit.
I mean... Like I said, you really don't need to prepare for much. It's just dinner. Have fun with it.
I know, but I just want to make a good first impression. If I screw this up, I won't be taken seriously in my profession ever again.
Your profession?
He leans back in his seat and laughs.
You won't be taken seriously at the dining table ever again.
He says this with a hint of sarcasm.
However, if it's anything like the dinner we had last night, I'm sure you'll do fine.
He winks at me after he says this, which flusters me for a moment.
Personally, I think you're over-exaggerating.
Maybe I am. In any other place this would be reasonable, but... Does he tend to take these things seriously? He thinks for a moment, his nose twitching.
No, not really. I mean, he does, but he just takes a more relaxed approach.
That sounds like it's going to make my job a lot easier. I'll take your word for it. The rest of the day passes by without any trouble. I started to feel very tired at one point. Or maybe I just needed to stretch my legs. Either way, I laid in bed to rest for a bit and almost fell asleep. Lyre came in and nudged me back into reality. He told me that we should leave soon, so I put on my suit. The soap from that bath did wonders to my hair, giving it a really nice shine. It feels really nice as well. Nicer than it's felt in a long time. I pick up the letters and scrolls off of the desk and make my way to the door. I look down the hall and see Lyre with his arms resting on the sill of the window. He's watching the sun go down behind the mountains, and his figure is engulfed in a warm light. His tail is swaying slowly behind him, and his eyes are glazed with the evening light. When I get closer, he turns his head and smiles.
Look at the sunset.
I stand next to him and look out the window. The sun eclipses behind the mountains, and its warm light cascades over the landscape. The grassy hills are bathed in a deep light as the wind creates waves across them. A soft wind blows through the hall and twists around the pillars.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yes, it's very beautiful.
You're probably not used to views like this. You'll find that Lyre is a very beautiful place.
I'm sure I will. Back home there aren't as many mountains, but the way the sun shimmers on the waters of the coast is always enchanting. The beaches are as white as the moon, and the water is crystal clear.
I've never been that far west before.
Never?
Yes. I've spent all my life on this side of the continent. It would be nice to go explore the rest of Tigran.
I think I already know the answer, but I ask him anyway. Why don't you? He lowers his head with a bittersweet smile.
Unless this kingdom sprouts legs and walks across the entirety of Tigran, I can't. I have given my life and heart to the king in this kingdom. I'll be doing this for the rest of my life.
He gestures out across the landscape. That sounds sad.
It's not all bad. I did go south once. Maybe duty will call me to go to other places as well.
He lets out a dreary sigh.
Still, that was before I was a knight. I'm not sure if I'll ever have opportunities like that ever again.
We begin walking down the hall at a slow pace. I think you would like Erin. It's a beautiful place with a perfect climate, rolling hills. Plenty of wonderful sights to see.
I'm more interested in stranger places.
Like?
Like the Shadow Gulch or the Parched Labyrinth. I just want to go somewhere new. Somewhere different. Different from this.
He gestures outside.
After a while, it starts to feel like the mountains are closing in around you. It can get a bit claustrophobic.
I nod in agreement and we walk in silence a bit longer. Lyre is walking with his paws behind his back and his chin high. He keeps opening his mouth as if he's about to say something, only to close it. Finally, he speaks.
I'm sorry about earlier.
What?
Snapping at you like that. It's my fault anyway. I could sense you were uncomfortable the whole time, but I thought I could make things less uncomfortable if I just played it casual. I also figured that since you were looking, I would tease you as a joke. I'm usually the only one in there during that time of day.
Is this about the bathroom?
Yes?
I reach over and place my hand on his back. It's fine. He grimaces, then puts on a shy grin.
You're right. I'm sorry. I just tend to overthink these things. The last thing I want to do is make it seem like I was being overly...
I didn't know you were so shy about your body. You didn't have to pretend to be so open just for me. My jest gets to him as I watch his mouth curl like he's trying to stop a smile.
I'm not, I just...
He sighs and waves his paw dismissively. I let out a slight chuckle. What?
You have a nice laugh.
I could feel my face flush red. Please don't say that. We laugh together for a moment, then carry on the rest of our walk in silence. Delving far into the interior of the castle, we twist and turn through the halls. The torches lining the hallway are lit with a glowing blue fire. As we make our way deeper and deeper into the castle, we pass framed paintings of noble-looking people. I see a badger dressed in colourful clothing with a large ruff around his neck. A little ways down, I see a portrait of a fox clad in a white and purple silk dress and a shawl. After a few more portraits, we come across a large pair of double doors.
Well, here we are. Are you ready?
I swallow the lump in my throat and nod, straightening out my clothes. It's just dinner. It's just dinner.
Calm down. He just wants to meet you.
Lyre walks up to one of the large doors and raps at it. For a moment there's only the sound of the door knocker echoing down the empty halls. Then there's the sound of someone clearing their throat and a voice calls out from the other side.
Come in.
Lyre glances in my direction with a smile and opens the door. The door swings open and a warmly lit dining room meets my eyes. There's a large wooden table in the centre with 3 chairs. I look to my left and see the other chairs have been stacked up against the wall. Cabinets and chests line this wall underneath the curtained windows. Straight ahead of me is a large painting of a table full of food and butchered meats. It looks like a royal pantry, games strewn about and hanging from racks. A large chandelier hangs from the ceiling right above the table, illuminating the room with a soft glow from the candles. Despite all of this, the room does look fairly simple, albeit very comfortable. After taking everything in, I'm immediately drawn to the men in the room who stand to greet me. There, standing next to the chair at the end of the table, is a large deer. The king. His antlers are tall and elegant, a crown with a crest of tigran framing the base of each one. The shimmering green gem at the top of the crown matches his bright green eyes. He's clad in a large fur coat made up of green and purple fabric. He's almost as tall as Lyre, taller if you count the antlers. Height aside, he has a very kingly body. I look to the right side of the table and see another deer. This must be the crown prince. He's not nearly as tall as his father, almost coming up to my height. The antlers on his head are perfectly symmetrical prongs. He's wearing neat clothing of a similar colour. He has a cape draped over his shoulder, pinned down with the crest of tigran. His demeanour is dismissive and he barely makes eye contact with me as I enter the room. I turn my gaze back to the king and lower myself to one knee, bowing my head. King Raynar, it is an honor to meet you. He has a tired look on his face, but there's a warmth to his voice when he replies.
It is good to see that you have recovered from your injuries, Lord Richter. I am so terribly sorry about what happened to you on your journey here.
Yes, it was an unfortunate event. I am very grateful for the welcoming hospitality that you and your staff have shown me. He gives me an understanding nod and gestures towards the prince.
This is my son and heir, Prince Adrius.
I give a bow in his direction, hoping that I'm showing the right amount of courtesy. It is a pleasure to meet you, Your Highness. He grimaces for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, then straightens up. Likewise, my lord. I am glad to see that you are well. There's a short moment of silence between us, which is broken by the king.
I take it my captain has been helpful? He's always been a good lad.
He gestures towards Lyre, who is standing in the doorway. Lyre shrugs his shoulders and smiles. Very helpful, yes. A great first impression.
That's very good to hear. I knew that Captain Reed would do well with this task.
Even though I'm looking in the king's direction, I can still hear Lyle's tail wagging furiously.
Thank you very much, Lyre. Please, Lord Richter, take a seat.
It takes a moment for my legs to muster up the courage to work again as I walk around the table, passing behind Adrius. As I'm making my way to my seat, I hear the door close and realise that Lyle has quietly left. We take our seats and I set the box of scrolls and letters in my lap. I feel so out of place and awkward. There's another moment of silence before Raynar speaks up.
I hope that your accommodations are adequate. The royal apartments are a bit old, but we like to keep them cozy. Especially as the cold winds draw near.
He rests his hands on the table, leaning back in his chair. They are more than adequate, Your Majesty. He draws back with a small frown on his face.
Oh, please. You can refer to me as just Raynar. I would like to dispense with the formalities when not in public.
If it pleases you.
Lyre wasn't kidding. This is the most casual king I've ever met. I'm half expecting him to kick his hooves up on the table. My queen is the no-nonsense type, so I'm not used to this. What is that you have there?
He nods towards the box in my lap, resting his chin upon his hands with a curious look on his face. Oh, yes. I pick up the small box and place it on the table close to Raynar. These are some important documents that were sent with me to deliver to you. Financial reports, some settlements, news about the other territories, and other letters of intelligence. I figured that I should give these to you while I had the audience. He motions with his hand for me to slide the box his way. I push the box in his direction and he examines the documents.
Is this everything?
I fold my hands together. This is all that we could salvage after the crash. I have made a list of the missing documents and I'll have copies delivered. I apologize if some of them are a bit too dirty or water damaged. He opens one of the letters and skims over it before placing it on top of the small pile in the box.
I thank you for bringing these to me. I shall go through these later and share these documents with the rest of my court so that they can evaluate them.
He pushes the box off to his right and places his hands on the table. There's a long silence before Adrius lightly slaps his hands on the table in resignation, blowing out an exasperated sigh.
So that's it? A glance at a piece of paper and that's all you have to say?
The mood of the room instantly changes and for a moment I'm too shocked to even sink into my chair.
As I said, I will look at these documents later.
Why not look at them now? I'm sure Lord Richter wouldn't mind. Would you? He looks in my direction and I shake my head. Not at all. Raynar clicks his tongue and turns to me, drumming his fingers on the table.
I would prefer to wait. I had hoped to delay this meeting until Lord Kadaj arrived, but...
But we have a kingdom to rule. Raynar has a stern look on his face as he stares his son down from across the table. Unless you've forgotten. Raynar looks at me with a small eye roll.
My son has a knack for theatrics.
He then turns back to Adrius.
I have a kingdom to rule. And 2 other kingdoms to work with. If I see it is best to wait until both parties are here before discussing such matters,
he pats the top of the box with his hand.
Then that is what I shall do.
Adrius grits his teeth for a moment, then reluctantly concedes. Of course, father. I only have our kingdom's best interests at heart. Do as you wish. I just hope that the Irinian doesn't expect things to be this relaxing all the time. Adrius says this with a passive-aggressive smile while nodding in my direction. I try not to show any sign of discomfort and decide to just nod. Raynar leans back in his chair with a look of content on his face.
Of course not. Since we are still waiting on our ambassador from Driz, I assume that we could instead use this time for introductions.
He looks at me with a reassuring smirk. I'm still recovering from the random burst of tense energy, so I just make a noise of agreement. After a few minutes, the doors swing open, 2 servants holding them open on either side. 3 servers walk in, pushing rolling carts with food placed on them. The wheels squeak as they make their way up to the table. They begin to move all of the food from the carts and place them in the center of the table. There's a large roasted turkey sitting in the center, surrounded by greens and potatoes. They smell delicious, and I can see the steam visibly coming off of them. A large bowl with a salad is placed on the table, tossed and filled with many colourful vegetables. The lettuce is layered perfectly, and it's drizzled in oils and vinegar. Grapes of a rich purple colour are placed on a plate near the center, and there are bowls of different dressings. There's also a plate of crisp bread rolls. The smell reminds me of the bakeries back home. Just looking at them, I can imagine the cracking sounds the crust would make when breaking it. It's making my mouth water just looking at all of it. Finally, a large pot of soup is set next to the table on a rolling cart. With this, the servers begin to make our plates. Would you like the soup or the salad tonight, my lord? I quickly scan the table again and give my answer. I'm fine with anything, it all looks great. I watch them take a little bit of everything and place it on my plate. One of the servers walks forward with a pitcher of wine and fills my cup. After a while, everyone has been served their food. It's a lot, and I don't know if I'll be able to eat it all, but I just figure I'll eat as much as I can. It would be rude to not show my appreciation. Raynar's plate has a big steamed potato in a salad bowl with a bushel of grapes on the side. Adrius opted for a single bowl of soup with a small roll of bread. Raynar quickly cuts into his potato while plucking a few grapes to chew on. Adrius barely makes any noise drinking his soup with content eyes. I take a bite of the turkey and the flavour is shocking. It's wonderful. This turkey is like nothing I've ever eaten before. It might as well be a completely different bird. I take a few more bites before Raynar speaks up.
So, how are things in Erin? I haven't been to the Kingdom of Erin in about 10 years.
I take a moment to finish chewing on the piece of turkey in my mouth. I'm afraid you haven't missed out on much. Erin hasn't changed, and I don't think it will change for a while. The climate is as favourable as ever, and our citizens continue to thrive. I fear that I'm rambling, but when I make eye contact, I see that he's giving me his full attention and seems interested in the topic. Meanwhile, the prince sits across the table from me, picking away at his soup with a look of disinterest on his face. I'm told that Erin has managed to supply both Driz and Lyre with an abundance of food. We are fortunate to have such fertile farming lands, and very glad to be able to support our neighbouring kingdoms. Especially with winter drawing near. Raynar takes a sip of wine and leans back in his chair. There's a pleased smile on his face.
I agree with you on that matter. It is very important that we work together.
Adrius lets out a slight cough, which doesn't seem to faze Raynar.
The people of Lyre know better than anyone how harsh winter can be.
I'm sure that you do. He gives a slight smile and leans forward, taking a bite from his salad.
And we have your kingdom to thank for this food.
I nod in agreement, tipping my wine glass in his direction. We continue to eat while having conversations about our common interests. He seems to be very interested in me, which is new because I never thought I was that interesting. I guess being in the castle all this time would make him want to live vicariously through others. That's a stretch though, and I might be overanalyzing. I try to answer his questions to the best of my ability, but I don't feel like I have any good answers. The prince has been quiet for most of the time, interjecting with his thoughts occasionally. So, where exactly did you come from? How did someone like you achieve nobility? He asks this with a look of disdain. Someone like me. I'm starting to dislike him more and more as the night goes on. Maybe he's just blurting things out without meaning to be rude. I lower my glass after taking a long drink and pause to swallow. Your Highness, I'm afraid that is not a very interesting story. He doesn't look satisfied with that answer.
Good.
Lyle told me to get on his good side, but I don't think he has one. He seems to be bitter all around, I suppose. Though I wasn't asking for an interesting story. He traces his finger around the rim of his wine glass while resting his chin on his fist. I just worked hard and proved myself useful.
Speaking of hard work, I have some important news for you, Lord Richter. I am choosing to appoint you as the Royal Financial Advisor, along with your other duties. Do you think that you will be up to this challenge? It's a temporary position, nothing more.
Financial advisor? So I'll be looking after the kingdom's coin? At least it's something I have some common knowledge on. I've always been good with numbers, and I was never terrible with spending money. At least, I don't see myself ruining this kingdom financially. I fold my hands and try to respond calmly. I have experience with this sort of work back home. It shouldn't prove to be a challenge at all. He looks overjoyed to hear this. Was he expecting me to say no? I'm not exactly going to say no to the king.
That is excellent news. The winter solstice ball will be held a month from now, and we'll need you to figure out the expenses. It should be quite exciting for you, considering you've never been to one.
The winter solstice ball?
Yes, here in Lyre, it is one of our most famous celebrations. We celebrate the solstice as a reminder of the death and rebirth of our sun. We use this time to cherish our loved ones.
I think I remember hearing about this from somewhere. It sounds like a nice tradition. Similar to one we have in Erin, but ours is at the end of the year. I'll make sure that everything is in order.
Very good. We have past records on hand that you can refer to. They should help make things easier. I'll have them sent to your apartment in the morning.
Our meal goes further into the night, and soon everyone is finished eating. Raynar has completely cleaned his plate to the point where one would wonder if it was even used. I look down at my own plate, having a small amount of food left on it. I would finish it all, but I feel too full to eat anymore. I can feel a cold draft from the windows behind me and hear crickets chirping outside.
I believe that was an excellent meal. However, it's time for me to retire to my chambers. I'm afraid I've been awake since the 5th hour of this morning.
Raynar gets up from his seat and steps forward, holding out a large hand. I'm taken aback by this gesture, but reach forward.
He takes my hand in both of his and shakes it up and down once with a firm grip.
It was a pleasure to meet you, Lord Richter. I can tell getting to know you will be hard, so we'll have to do this again.
Of course.
I do hope that you enjoy your stay here, however long it may be.
Thank you, Raynar. I gather myself and look towards the prince who is standing across the table. Gathering myself, I'm not overly distraught leaving his presence. Still, I try my best to be polite and give a bow in his direction. It was an honor to meet you, Your Highness. He gives me a slight smile, however, I don't feel that it's authentic.
That makes two of us.
You're too kind. It was nice meeting you as well. One of the servers opens the door and Lyre walks into the room.
Good night, Lord Richter.
Good night. I give a bow in both of their directions and then make my way to the door. Lyre stands near the doorway, and as I make my way over, he gives me a wink with a soft smile. We walk through the doorway and I spot Raynar giving Adrius a despondent look before the door is closed. Lyre comes up to my side, smiling.
I assume everything went well?
He places his paw on my shoulder with a reassuring smile. Well, I wouldn't say that it went bad. You're looking at the new financial advisor.
That's good? I mean, I assume it's good.
I'm about to respond when I spot a painting of Raynar and Adrius out of the corner of my eye. Raynar is looking into the distance with a solemn look on his face, while Adrius confidently glares forward. I'd say the artist captured them perfectly. Those piercing orange eyes look as if they're following me. I see it as a good opportunity, and I don't think it should be too hard.
Okay, but how did dinner go? Dinner with the king. The food. Was it good?
The food was great, but I don't really know how to feel about it. Raynar's certainly a nice person. I can imagine that he's a good king. He's got an understanding head on his shoulders.
I agree. He's a great king. He has wisdom and kindness unparalleled with others.
The prince, on the other hand... Lyle rolls his eyes at the mention of the prince, laughing as he does.
He's not the most pleasant person to be around. And he certainly doesn't treat me with any respect.
Really? We've moved over to one of the windows. He rests his paws on the sill and one of his ears twitches slightly. I can feel the cool night breeze blowing through my hair and on my face.
I think he's called me by my name once within the past few months. And again, we don't talk much anymore.
What does he call you other than your name? He sighs, tapping his paws on the bricks as he lists off each term.
Wolf, dog, and hound, just to name a few.
Well, that makes him ignorant. You're only one of those things.
Yep. Pure Lyrian wolfman right here.
He bangs his fist on his chest, clattering the metal plates together. I laugh and he chuckles to himself timidly.
But I don't think he'll be a problem for you. Aside from being a little frustrating from time to time.
I'll steer clear of him either way. But I don't see that ending well. We continue to walk with Lyre in front, leading me through the maze of corridors. I watch the tip of his tail brush the floor from under his cape. We descend a flight of stairs and our walk begins to slow.
I'm glad that we can enjoy each other's company.
He shoots me a sheepish smile.
I only mean, it's nice that we're able to get along. Makes things a little easier.
He fiddles with one of his gloves, pulling the fourchettes off of his fingers, then pulling the glove back down on his paw by the trank.
It gets very lonely in this castle. It's hard to have friends when you're the captain of the Royal Guard. Things are nice, but I barely have any time to meet new people or go places.
He pauses, letting the words hang in the air.
I'm sorry if this comes off as a bit odd considering I met you only yesterday, but I'm looking forward to working with you, Richter.
As strange as it is, it's nice to hear something like that. Especially coming from him. We arrive at the door to my room and he stands there waiting for me to say something. I feel the same way. I've only known you for 2 days and I already feel more comfortable around you than anybody else back home.
Really?
Yeah. Back in Erin, people only want things from you. And if you don't have what they want, then they don't even give you the light of day. You're the first person who I feel actually wants to be my friend and isn't just trying to use me. I open the door to my room and step inside. Good night, Lyre. He looks at me with a soft smile, his eyes reflecting the little light there is in the darkness. I can hear his tail beating against his cape as he wags it back and forth.
Good night, Richter.
He closes the door and I can hear his heavy footfalls make their way down the hall. I take off my jacket and walk over to my bed, falling onto the mattress. I feel exhausted after everything that happened today. Everything fades out around me as I drift into a deep sleep. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So, that was Chapter 2. I decided to give you an extra long episode this time, given that the first episode was so short and so long ago. And immediately, we got a lot of fun things. Lyre and Richter appear to be hitting it off very well, and we got introduced to King Raynar and Prince Adrius. But yes, I'm going to leave this episode here. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll be sure to leave links as I usually do to where you can support this project and support the writer. Or well, support, I can say support this project, I say support this project, support the future projects. This project is finished, where you can support the writer and his future projects. And I'll be leaving links to where you can support me, obviously. To my Twitter page, you can follow me there if you'd like. To my Ko-fi, you can donate if you feel so inclined, but don't feel pressured to. And maybe you might like this video, subscribe to the channel, everything else that YouTubers tell you to do these days. But yes, that is more than enough rambling out of me for now. This has been Pink Wisp reading Lyre. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.